what I've seen is that the opening up process or transitioning to different types of non-monogamy can expose all the cracks in the foundation of your relationships. So, and usually there's a need for like this backlog of repair and conflict resolution that people haven't
Yeah.
done. And it's really overwhelming because it's like we have all this trust stuff to repair, but we're trying to do this other thing right now. And how do we do both?
Going Inside is a podcast on a mission to help people heal from trauma and reconnect with their authentic self. Join me, trauma therapist John Clarke, for guest interviews, real-life therapy sessions, and soothing guided meditations. Whether you're navigating your own trauma, helping others heal from trauma, or simply yearning for a deeper understanding of yourself, Going Inside is your companion on the path to healing and self-discovery. Download free guided meditations and apply to work with me one-on-one at johnclarketherapy.com. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Jessica Fern holds a master's degree in conflict resolution, is a certified clinical trauma professional, a trained IFS practitioner, and an integrative therapist drawing on 25 years of experience in somatic, narrative, psychotherapeutic, and spiritual healing modalities. She is the internationally recognized author of Polysecure, the Polysecure Workbook, and Polywise. Jessica, thank you so much for being here. What else should people know about who you are and how
Y-
you got here?
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you for having me. Um, that's a big question. Yeah,
No,
you'll learn
it's
as we talk,
intentionally
right?
big. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people love it, some people hate it. They're like, "Can you get more specific?"
Right.
It's a therapist question.
I get that a lot when I'm like, "So how are you?" And some people can launch right into that, and some people are like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
don't know how to answer that question."
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, a therapist asking it has a different
It has a
context to
different
some
meaning,
people.
right? How are you really?
Yeah, exactly. "How are you really doing?" "How are
Right.
we doing?" Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm curious just a little bit of your story and in terms of, yeah, how you uh, got here as a practitioner, as an author. I mean, it's really interesting that you've got these books in a really specific topic area, and yeah, just what else people should know.
Yeah, I mean, I think my path has been very circuitous, and yet there's always been these threads of psychological healing, spiritual healing, doing deep inner work, whatever the modality or the title was. Yeah, but I was
Mhm.
specifically doing psychotherapy and had a lot of couples clients and had couples starting to come to me wanting to open up their relationship. And I realized I don't have any training in this. And then when I looked up and I was like, there are no trainings in this. And the only thing I've seen about this professionally really kind of pathologizes this. So I realized I had to figure it out and give my clients something different than pathologizing them for,
Mhm.
the practices of non-monogamy or even the identity of being non-monogamous. So it was really in that dive, discovery, figuring it out, with myself and clients that led to the first book and the second, actually, those books really go together, Polysecure and Polywise, that, kind of brought me into authorship.
That's great.
Yeah.
I remember this was, yeah, well over 10 years ago, but I had a client out here in San Francisco who was in an open relationship, and she just started teaching me about it and
Yeah.
teaching me the lingo and
Yeah.
we already had an established working relationship and that we're doing great work therapeutically, um and I was open to, yeah, supporting her with this piece of her life, and the kind of culture around it was a lot of the discussions, and then sure enough, like 3 months later, someone called me and they're like, "You're the therapist that specializes in open relationships, right?"
It doesn't take much, right?
And I was like,
Right.
I guess I am now. I know, like, 3 words.
You're right, exactly. I think that's kind of what
I've read, like,
happened
1
too
book,
is
yeah.
right, once I was working with 1 or 2, 3 couples, and suddenly they were all like, "There's someone,"
Yeah,
'cause
go.
you're
Yeah,
you're describing a level of openness, and unfortunately, that's what so many people don't get with their therapists. Yeah, they're
yeah.
just told, like, "This is hard, go back to monogamy."
Yeah.
or you have an attachment disorder, or you have a sex addiction, it's just like, so
Yeah.
they really come to us, I think, usually quite wounded by other therapists.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's if what therapists may see could be skewed in that, and this was my experience early on, was that a lot of what I was seeing was ways in which polyamory was not working for people,
Yeah.
and so that's also a very skewed, kind of sample in itself.
But couldn't we say that about monogamous and divorce? Like, aren't
Sure.
all of our monogamous clients also not doing very well in their like, they're all coming because 'cause they're struggling, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Once you started doing more of this work, tell me more about how you further developed like this specialty, and then got to the point where you had enough to write a book about it.
Yeah. I started to see the patterns, and some of that was my previous research training in grounded theory, which is instead of imposing the theory as a researcher onto the data and often unintentionally making it fit the theories, we really go theoryless and just listen to the narratives and then put together, what am I hearing again and again and again?
Mm.
And so that's what I did with my therapy sessions is, oh, what am I hearing again and again and again? Oh, I'm hearing attachment distress. I'm hearing primal panic. I'm hearing challenges with a monogamous couple opening up and having codependency that's getting in the way of their polyamory, like again and again and again. And so I started to formulate that into, okay, here's sort of the main archetypal patterns I'm seeing at this point, and here's how to work through them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess, can you say more about those patterns, the main ones you see even recently? Like, how has your understanding of all this evolved
Even
with,
evolved.
yeah, the writing
Yeah.
of of books, but also your own work?
Yeah, that's great. I'll say some of the patterns first and then, how it's even evolved since the books have come out. But one of the patterns is attachment distress. That, surprise, trying to forge attachment relationships with more than one person in a society that is very heteronormative and mononormative, can create challenges, uncharted territory. People get surprised that they're having anxious or disorganized or avoidant attachment come up when they previously didn't experience that within themselves. So that was one thing, right? And particularly that when there was an original couple or there is a primary couple, um, that when they're apart, there can be attachment distress, just like a baby that is separated from its caretaker, and that same kind of primal panic. And I'll jump actually to what evolved with that, because at first I was really doing a lot of polyvagal techniques
Mm.
for people, like, to help them with the primal panic. They're home alone, their partner's on a date, they're melting down. And so would do a combination of like EFT, where I was like a lot of the partner kind of being a bookend of meeting the attachment needs. And then when the person is alone, doing a lot of polyvagal theory stuff. And now I have learned that in every primal attachment meltdown I have worked with, there is a IFS perspective of like a screaming infant part.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that when we work with the part, it just changes the game completely.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So, the other patterns I see are relationships that actually aren't best well matched. And it's not even usually conscious, like, let's try this, but it's sort of trying it and you're like, this isn't a good match in the first place, so it doesn't work very well. As I already mentioned, long-standing relationships, develop codependent patterns. That's not even a criticism. That's just like neutral. It's
Yeah.
just what happens, right? We get very enmeshed when we share life with people, and it's hard to be differentiated and polyamorous when you're codependent in one relationship. What I've seen is that the opening up process or transitioning to different types of non-monogamy can expose all the cracks in the foundation of your relationships. So and usually there's a need for, like, this backlog of repair and conflict resolution that people haven't
Yeah.
done. And it's really overwhelming because it's like, we have all this trust stuff to repair, but we're trying to do this other thing right now, and how do we do both?
IFS is simple but not easy. On the surface, it's about parts and self. But when you're in the room with a client, things can get complex fast. Helping someone meet a protective part or wounded exile, that takes skill. And most importantly, it takes safety. My name is John Clarke, trauma therapist and IFS therapist, and in this free webinar for therapists and practitioners, we're going to explore the subtleties that make IFS so powerful and how to navigate them with more clarity and confidence. You're going to learn why safety is everything and how to do it well, what trips therapists up when applying IFS in practice, and a simple tool that you can begin using right away. If you want to go beyond theory and truly embody the work, then this is for you. Join the free webinar today. Link is in the description. Is it fair to say a lot of folks come to non-monogamy as a response to some of those unhealed cracks in the foundation, or hoping this would help, and then opening up the relationship often points them back to these cracks?
And not necessarily, but that is a percentage of what happens. Yes. There's definitely a percentage of people that are feeling not so satisfied in their relationship. They're wanting more and they are looking for more, but they're not looking to just jump ship necessarily or like as the exit strategy of that relationship, but they are maybe looking to fill certain needs, right? But a lot of people do this because they feel like this is who they are, separate from the quality of the relationships that they're in, right? That this they feel like they who they are as someone who is exploring love or sex with multiple people. Yeah. So it really people discuss it as an orientation, and for some people, I think that really is the case, and for some people, it's not necessarily the case, it's more of a lifestyle choice they're making.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's okay if this is anecdotally your input or reaction to this question, but do you have a sense that, or do you have the opinion that people are generally more wired for non-monogamy, or as a baseline, or some people are more wired for monogamy?
I see when I did a lot of research on this, qualitative, interviews with people, and I see it from that as a spectrum. And on one end, we'd have monogamy, the other end, polyamory. And the people on the far end of the spectrum all describe it as the way they're wired, whether it's monogamous or polyamorous. It's like
Yeah.
fundamentally, this is all I can do. This is who I am. That's it. And then there's a lot of people in the middle who feel like they could shift back and forth. It depends on phase of life or relationship, person they're with. Yeah, so I do think there can be a wiring to it, and yet there doesn't have to be in order to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do people figure out their wiring other than through experimenting?
Yeah, some people, feel like they have not done well in monogamy, whether it's lots of cheating or maybe there hasn't been actual cheating, but there's serial monogamy, um, and so they'll describe feeling like they failed at monogamy or it was just never a good fit. Whereas some people just notice the desire and urge that's in them that's longing to be expressed.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then
makes sense.
experimenting. Yeah, and some people, depending on, like, your microculture and what year it was, and, some people are starting out this way, which is amazing,
Mhm.
to just feel like
Yeah, it
that's an
seems to be
option on
more
the table.
commonplace. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Especially in perhaps more progressive parts of the country. I mean, I live in San Francisco, but I'm from Southern Virginia, so,
yeah.
probably not as common where I'm from, but quite common where I live now, and fairly common or increasingly common among my clients.
Yeah, I mean, you, definitely live in sort of one of the meccas of non-monogamous
Yeah,
culture, yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, you mentioned that for many folks, it activates this, a very young part, an
Yeah,
exhale of sorts, and that is often, I imagine, where the work is then.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that when I really started bringing Park's work to non-monogamy, it just changed helping people, which, it still can be a difficult, bumpy road, but it just really changed things for us to start talking about, your monogamous parts and what those are saying versus your curious polyamorous parts, right? Or your loyal parts to certain ideas, right? And especially when there's distress, the parts that are struggling and what they need.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well, outside of, this conversation of ethical non-monogamy, I think a lot of what something I love that IFS offers and teaches is when we are anxious, uh, we can turn toward that part and be there with that part, and that doing that internal attachment work makes us more available for the external
Right.
attachment. That's also not to say, um, that you're always the problem or it's always your responsibility or that maybe a partner isn't actually hurting you or, like, causing harm, but
Exactly. Yes, yes to both points.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it offers that invitation or that teaches that skill, I suppose.
Yeah, and there's really something about mononormative culture that trains us to turn our partner into the source. And then we have
Exactly, yeah.
a lot of, like, young parts and teenage parts that are just totally hyper focused or turned towards our partner as the source. So a lot of the work I do is training parts or just even letting parts know, like, "Oh, let's turn you can turn back
Mhm.
to the person." Like, "I'm the source. I'm here for you, and, yeah, my partner actually can't meet those needs for you as this part. Only I can."
Yeah,
And it makes such a difference.
yeah,
And again, there still might be actual legitimate relationship needs that your partner does need to be stepping up for and showing up for, but
right.
those parts not grasping so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the partner to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can speak more about needs at large because, another thing I notice is a lot of folks who also, like, kind of try to get all their needs met either by one person or maybe by the wrong person,
Yeah.
for instance, like, a lot of my clients out here who are in tech or they're like very involved in their jobs, sometimes it's like their boss is also like their parent or their partner or their whatever or their best friend. And it's like sometimes it's like, why aren't you making me feel seen or why aren't you supporting me or why aren't you validating me or whatever, right? It can be like, why are you not meeting all the needs that I have,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And sometimes we can project those onto our partners too. And then that can also activate stuff in our partners of like, oh, I must be letting you down if I can't meet every single need.
Right. It's one of these kind of falsehoods that we have this standard that one partner's supposed to meet all the needs, and yet we know that's like one human can't meet all the needs. Right? We know one parent can't meet all the needs of one child.
Yeah.
Esther Perel says it well. We have we're expecting one partner to meet the needs of what an entire village used to offer us in terms of connection and stimulation and ritual and presence and play and yeah. So I forget where I heard this many years ago, but there was something that if you had less than 3 people in your life that you were, like, relying on and close to, it created dysfunctional dynamics. So if you only have 1 or 2, you're probably experiencing some form of a dysfunctional enmeshment, codependency that, like, we really need 3 or more people that we're turning towards.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Right. Right, I think we all know it, not just intuitively, we know it experientially that it really works to just be tuning into and depending on one person or for one person to be totally relying on us.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the folks that, I guess like do it well, so to speak,
Mhm.
or, yeah, what are they doing differently? And also like, yeah, how do your books kind of help them learn these skills?
Yeah. In essence, they're slowing down and they're really considering everyone involved. We can unpack that for a while, like what it really means to consider your partner and not just follow your agreements and then say, "Well, I followed our agreements even though I knew you were, like, crying in the next room." Right? Right, like, what does it mean to really care for each other and respect each other and care for ourselves in this? A lot of the experience of, um, practicing non-monogamy is people learning that they matter for the first time, actually, right? In the experience of having multiple loves or lovers, realizing that there usually wasn't enough self-focus either.
Mhm.
Yeah, so people are attuned to the attachment needs. They're looking to fill those attachment buckets, so to speak. Um, the people that don't do well are usually ones that are like racing to some kind of ideal finish line at the expense of themselves and their partners versus like slow and steady wins the race, is what I would say. Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen this thing where when people open up, especially if you've been in a long-term committed relationship, it's almost like you're the age you were before you started that relationship. A lot of people have this like they're 20 again or they're a teenager again, yet they're in their 30s or 40s or 70s opening up. And there's this period of adolescence that people go through with their polyamory and um, they can cause a lot of harm. So, even if it's happening, if people are starting to catch it and mitigate it and course correct, like, those are people that are starting to do it really well.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, but it makes sense that there's some, dynamic of regression or going back to that place in time, and it's always fascinating to me when people have, I don't know, been met very early, or people that are like high school sweethearts and have been together for decades, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
you must wonder what you would be like without this person or outside of this relationship, right? Or meeting during such a critical developmental stage like high school or even college is such a dynamic time in which we're like really figuring out who we are and individuating from parents and family, and autonomy is like a big theme, and then coming together, um or also like and also people that come together um through like traumatic things happening, or
Yeah.
just through their wounding, right? And a lot of attraction coming from wounding is
Yes.
something I think a lot about, especially through this IFS lens.
Yes. Absolutely. I do see it a lot where people have been together a really long time, and I'm always surprised when it's been since high school or college just because it's not my personal story or experience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, what else comes to mind around this? Or I guess, what do you want people to know in terms of, how you help or how your books help?
Yeah. I think what Polysecure does is it really is for anybody, regardless of your relationship structure, of how do you build a safe haven and a secure base? How do you build a secure attachment with a partner or really anyone that you want a secure attachment with without me telling you you're supposed to be exclusive? And so I really combed through the suggestions and the prescriptions that, people were giving and pulled out the monogamy. And it's like, here's the essence of the things that we do.
Mhm,
So that is helping people and even just to prioritize the attachment needs and the attachment system through all of this.
mhm.
Yeah, because there can be a heightened anxiety, attachment anxiety that happens when you can't just instantly merge with your second or third partner because you're not single, right? Like there's a challenge in not being single in regards to how we typically are taught to just leap into relationships or what the like relationship escalator looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, yeah, polysecure is just getting into those other challenges of how do we look at things like codependency? How do we challenge and switch paradigms? But I have a chapter that gives exercises on parts and really, especially for the people that are struggling, it is usually several parts that they have that are struggling.
Mhm.
5 or 6 that are screaming, resisting, and then so it's hard to know. So I really want people to make the decision whether this is for them or not from
Yeah.
self,
Mhm.
right? That the clarity of, yes, I actually do know myself and I am better off in an exclusive relationship. That's a beautiful decision from self clarity,
Mhm.
right? Versus parts that are making the decision. And same thing, knowing that you want to be doing non monogamy is coming from self. So,
Mhm.
yeah, sorting through all those parts is priceless.
Mhm. Yeah. And I imagine a lot of parts come up once couples open their
A
relationship
lot.
the first time. Yeah, a lot.
Mhm.
And I imagine one of a number of fears that might come up is, if we do this, what if you fall in love with someone else or leave me for someone else,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do you support couples through that?
Yeah.
Or do
Well,
you just kind of honor it that it
yeah. Well,
could
sometimes the
happen?
point is falling in love with someone else, like more in
Mhm.
polyamory, where it's like, yes, I am looking to have that kind of fall in love relationship with multiple people. But I was just talking with a couple client this morning, and they were actually reflecting on like, we can't really put restrictions on falling in love because, like, how can we put boundaries around feelings, right? So, a lot of people try to make that as a rule, not to fall in love, and usually I see it backfire.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What do you do instead?
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about this is actually even usually changing the style that you kind of thought you signed up for. And this would be more of a polyamorous situation.
Mhm.
And is that what you all want? And really unpacking, um, is that what they want to do? What does it mean if they do it? All of that. Yeah, because I mean, just because you're falling in love or have fallen in love doesn't mean this person is necessarily now central, but usually you want them to be. So can they be more centered in your life or do they need to be more peripheral? So just figuring all of that out. And it's different for every
Mhm.
couple. Yeah. There was a second piece you said though, falling in love or leaving. Is that what you said? Yeah. Yeah. I think it is a very common fear. And I think there's a healthy, like, legitimate fear in there. There is I mean, in any relationship, even monogamous, the statistics of cheating and divorce tell us this probably it's less likely to last in some ways.
Yeah, it's most likely to happen.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So there is a real, like, yeah, it's true, your partner could leave you, and you're kind of putting yourself out there a little bit more to maybe even have that be possible, but, um it's not about living from fear. A lot of this paradigm is about living from love and connection. And so if your relationship is strong, most likely you're not going to have someone who's just picking up and leaving you
Yeah.
unless there's really been like exiled parts, denied aspects of self, trauma that hasn't been dealt with, right? And most likely the relationship would have ended anyway. It just accelerated the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to your point, even in monogamous relationships, a lot of times it's like we try not to think about what if my partner left us, but it's a very it's a possibility,
Right?
um,
It's a very real possibility.
very
Yeah.
real possibility. Yeah, but
Yeah.
so many people naturally we just don't even want to look at our fears, which in turn kind of gives them even more power over us.
Yeah, I think that's one of the shifts is that it's not that these realities don't exist in monogamy, but there's something about the structure of monogamy that lets us not look at them. And then we switch and transition into polyamory, non-monogamy, and it's like, "Oh, I can't not look at these anymore." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, it sounds like a lot of it is also about, I guess, truthfulness, and a lot of
Mhm.
people, end up getting in trouble with is a lack of truthfulness.
Yeah.
Or, do you have feelings for your coworker? No, I don't, when in fact you do. Or to your point, or to your client's point, it's like those feelings just happen and maybe are undeniable, or denying your inherent attraction to someone. Yeah. It's also like your
Right.
partner knows you're lying. But
Yeah. Right, even with monogamous couples I know or counsel, I always say, like, it's it's would be really great to admit when there is attraction or feelings. That doesn't mean you act on them, but not to make that taboo in the relationship.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it is very taboo, which adds more pressure and shame around it, and
yes,
shame means things get buried, right?
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yes, and I think when we're stuck in our own shame or looking through the lens of our shame parts, we really lose access to our relational parts
yeah,
and aren't in relationship with our partner in that moment. We're really just in this sort of collapsed self-focus.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and we have like I don't know if you ever reactance theory.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it makes me think of that too. Like basically, a study I remember from like GSEC 101 is basically when people's freedoms are threatened or constrained, they are statistically more likely to act in opposition. And so
Right.
they would do this thing of like, a little patch of grass that says, "Do not step on the grass." People are more
Right.
likely to step on it. It's just like you
Li
can't tell me what to do.
right? No, that's exactly what happens. Don't fall in love. It's like, "Oh, that's the fastest path to falling in love with
Yeah,
somebody."
exactly. Tell them
Yeah.
not to. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But also, I don't. This might be a really cheesy example, but I think there's like some movie called Hall Pass
Uh-huh.
where that one of the partners, like, gives the other permission to, like, explore outside the relationship,
Mhm.
you know, and then they do it and, like, find out they love what they had after all or something like that, but
Yeah. I mean, often when people feel like they have the freedom in their relationships to explore love and connection and romance or sex with others, they're so grateful. Like they really actually value those relationships even more because it's
mhm,
like, wow, I can be all of me in this relationship where I don't have to, you know, stuff myself into a certain way to be in this relationship.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's kind of a paradox,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah. So sometimes some people, we just like to feel like our freedoms are not limited, that our autonomy is truly ours, and I guess, again, as someone who doesn't really um, have this specialty that you have. I was joking at the beginning, but some people seem to have a even higher drive for autonomy than others, and some
Yeah.
people seem to have a really high drive for, I guess, interdependence or like a healthy singular connection.
Yeah, I talk about this in Polysecure. I also
Mhm,
kind of use the spectrum of like, we all are straddling the need for connection, closeness, interdependence on like one end, and then on the other end, autonomy, independence, choice, freedom, and that these are healthy. And in their healthy range, we can manage both. We can go a little this way, we can go a little that way. We can sort of like reins of riding a horse or something, like you're
mhm,
using both reins. But then the attachment styles are what can go too far into autonomy, can then become withdrawal and isolation,
mhm,
right? Too much disconnection. And then similar connection can become too far into loss of self
mhm.
and enmeshment.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I connect that to the attachment styles as well, but that secure attachment is being able to hold both of those needs and manage them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I had another question. Whoops, just dropped my pen. I had another question, but it's escaping me now. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe it won't.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess what else is next on your horizon? Like, is it another book? Is it another way of, yeah, kind of furthering your work and research?
Yeah, it is another book. So I have a book coming out called Transforming the Shame Triangle, and it's not about relationships and non-monogamy at all. It's inner parts work. And so identifying an internalized drama triangle. So the
Mm,
shame triangle is our inner critic, our shame, and then multiple escapers, the ways that we escape.
Mhm.
And so it's, you know, fleshing out what the shame triangle is, how I see it as this inner constellation of parts that I've yet to meet someone who doesn't have those parts. And that these parts are either the central, like, source of suffering, or there's something else in our life, and it's these parts that are getting in the way of it. Yeah, and that when we work through and transform these parts, then we're actually living more authentically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like a very needed book.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, it came from just working with people,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and looking at the patterns and, um, hearing the voice of the inner critic and realizing that it has a direct relationship to a shame part, and that those 2 are pretty intense, the voice that beats us up, and then I
Yeah.
see shame as the part that absorbs the inner critic and believes it
Yeah.
and deflates. And then that sort of calls on an escaper or multiple escapers to either overfunction or underfunction to just, like, zone out, the inner critic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and for a lot of people, the escaper is the cheating, right? Is the
Yeah.
doing something impulsive. Yeah, which is oftentimes like, a way of saying, like, I don't know how to actually heal myself or heal my relationship, right?
Yeah.
Or how to end a relationship, so I'm gonna make you do it, whatever.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll make you do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I've
Yeah.
seen, people that cheat when we explore it from a parts lens. There's an exiled part that's younger, but more adolescent usually, who doesn't even know the partner that they're with. Like, doesn't really have a
Yeah.
relationship to the partner, whereas there's usually a few kind of partner-like parts that are very upset that they caused so much harm in the
Mhm.
relationship and want to
Yeah.
repair with their partner, and the part that actually did those actions is, like, yeah, in this sort of independence mode and disconnected from a lot of the system.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
or rebelling, like agreeing to things that you didn't actually want, that don't actually
mhm.
work for you.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that happens even in non-monogamy. You think,
Yeah.
"Wow, here's a relationship structure that shouldn't even have cheating," and they're still cheating in non-monogamy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, like, self-abandoning or bypassing in order to
Yes.
try to keep my partner or keep them happy, right? Or keep them from leaving or whatever it is.
Right. Exactly. So, like,
Yeah.
over caretaking or, contorting ourselves to be the partner that we think we're supposed to be.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, primarily my work is as a trauma therapist, so that's where my head goes is at what point was it useful or imperative that you learn to do that, right, and bypass your needs or become whatever your, alcoholic mother needed at the time or whatever it was, or your
Right.
suicidal father, that was probably really important at some point to contort in that way, and, oh, yeah, you're still doing it, and you're, you know, 35 or whatever.
Yeah. Right. I think of it as like, a lot of these parts are like foods that have expired. Like at one point, food before its expiration date,
Mm,
it nourishes us, it's helping us, we need it. And
yeah,
then these parts, as we age, they have an expiration date on them that, like, oh, now you're not helpful, you're actually harmful to
yeah,
ingest food that has expired.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think about these moments all the time, as a parent, I've got 2 little kids, and, those moments where I just think like, gosh, our kids are so dependent on us, like, they have to do whatever it takes to keep this connection, so for instance, like, not if, but when I have, like, a misstep as a parent or, like, lose my temper and then apologize to my daughter, it's like there was one time this happened where I could tell she kind of felt like she should forgive me even if she's
Yeah,
not ready yet, because
right.
it's like, I am one of her primary connections, so it would be like, important to do that. So I try to be as thoughtful as I can about that and those moments of, like, you don't have to forgive me or at all,
Mm,
or if you're not ready yet, and also, um, but, those moments where we just have to do whatever it takes to maintain connection,
yeah.
especially, with our caregivers.
Yeah, my we just had a similar conversation in my house this past week where my son was going into his 2nd year of soccer, and he really liked it the 1st year, and he's been complaining about it and just not wanting to do it, and finally he revealed, like, he was doing it to make his dad happy because his dad loves soccer so much, and we were like, "Oh, wow," like, we didn't realize this was happening, because his dad wasn't pushing him and
Yeah.
forcing him, and yet just his dad being so enthusiastic about it, right? Our son's learning, "Oh, look at how jazzed,
Yeah, get more
amped up
love,
dad
get more
is,"
connection.
right?
Yeah.
Right, and so the conversation we had, I said, "You are our child, and so there's many ways you're gonna be very similar to us, but there's also gonna be a lot of ways you're totally different than us, and we love you just as much for those differences, and, yeah, never want you to say yes just to make us happy."
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
It's a perfect example, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I find that, like, in our heads, we are neutral and we know, like, a goal is to have less of an agenda with our children and impose our stuff onto them, and yet we do it. My
Right.
daughter, my 5-year-old, she learned to swim this summer, and we had been working on it for, like, a few years, but, really just, like, swim lessons that didn't work or schools that didn't really progress them or whatever, and then finally this summer, like, it clicked and she swam, and I could see that part of it was, like, she had the right instructor who actually knew how to teach her and get her comfortable and develop her own interest in the water that came from her, and that's what made it different,
Yeah.
and then also, I have, as a guy who grew up in the mountains but has been in California a long time, like,
Mhm.
I've have a love for the ocean and for surfing, and so, um, I have parts that really want her to fall in love with the ocean the way that I have
Totally.
because I think, like, what a gift, to have that in your life as a little girl growing up in California, and so, um I've noticed that we went to the beach, last weekend, and I at first, like, you're towing that line between helping your child be courageous and, like, you should be mindful of the ocean, but also you can interact with it and it'll keep you safe and also listen to yourself and, like,
Right.
you know, at first she was, like, crying and screaming and didn't wanna do it, right? And then slowly, um, when I eased up a little bit from my agenda of, like, I want you to get comfortable with the ocean, like, I want you to
Mhm.
love the ocean because I do, um, it's like almost self-led, not really. It's like it's a
Right.
form of an agenda, it's a self-like part, like, I know
Totally.
what's best for you, I know this thing would help you because it helped me, like, that's clearly mine, but, the more I let off some of that agenda, the more she just got curious about the ocean, and then started having good experiences with it over the weekend, and I could talk to her more about, like, how to stay safe with it, here's a couple things to remember, like, you never turn your back on the waves, and that's how you can see them coming and move if you need to. So
Mm,
it ended up being, like, a good experience, and she ended up loving it, kind of on her own, but I had to notice that pull in me to, like, really make it happen, right?
totally.
Yeah,
Yes.
always learning.
Always learning. Right, and what you're getting to is, like, the subtlety of how these things even show
Yeah,
up,
so subtle. Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
this isn't necessarily a traumatic event or abusive
Yeah,
parenting, right?
no,
Like
no, it's just
like,
like
this is, like,
yeah.
right, actually a conscious parent, and yet it still happens, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's subtle, right? And again, with kids, it's like the difference between like we don't want to teach our kids to be afraid necessarily,
Yeah,
but also not to bypass their intuition. Right?
right.
It's the whole thing with like making kids hug people or even hug like relatives, like just do it. And now in this like era of parenting that I seem to be in, it's like really giving them that permission of like
Yeah.
to choose to do it or not do it, which is so different than how it was for me as like a little boy
Same. I
growing
know
up in
my
the
grandma
South.
would, like, lick her lips before it was like this tongue that had a map in it almost, it had all these, like, cracks. She'd,
Yeah,
like, lick her lips and come in for a kiss, and it was like, "Ugh."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But to be a good granddaughter, you had to, like, do it, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. I had to do it. There wasn't an option.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've always given my son, I like give him the options though. I'm like, you can do a hug or a fist bump or a wave, but we always acknowledge people,
That's important. Yeah.
right? That's what's important,
Yeah.
like, so however you want to acknowledge people with your body, from
Yeah.
no touch to touch.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Teaching consent, which again was not a thing for me growing up. Um, and now
Right.
I'm glad that it's a thing.
Yeah. But I find that people do the other end where it becomes too permissive that you're like, not
Yeah.
teaching your kids, like, "No, we need to look people in the eyes," like, what that means to
Yeah.
acknowledge people when we say hello and goodbye versus, "Oh, you don't have to hug, so you don't even have to do anything."
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, um, this kind of like gentle parenting era, quote unquote, hasn't been around long enough to be studied. So we don't really know what kind of adults they'll become, but we'll see.
We'll
We're always
see.
like calibrating, right? But again, like this thing that I was thinking of with my daughter, it's like I'm at risk of communicating is like um your feelings about the ocean don't matter, right? Or your fears aren't
Yeah.
valid or whatever, which she internalizes that and later is in a
Mm,
relationship 2 decades from now or whatever, going, oh, my needs don't matter, my fear doesn't matter, or I need to do non-monogamy because my partner wants to, even though I'm so clear that I don't want to or whatever, right? So like a kid learning as early as possible to listen to that inner voice, that inner self, is like so crucial. Um, Even a little thing that we'll do, like she makes a lot of art and she's like, what do you think? Do you like it? And so we try to bring that back to her, like, do you like it? How do what do you think about it? What do you feel about it? Right. Cause so much of it starts to become external, right? Like, do you think
yeah.
this is pretty? And if daddy does, great. Like, I'm going to do it like this, or I'm going to color in the lines more. And if not, it's like, oh, daddy didn't like it. So
Right.
all those moments,
Right. And you've probably experienced this too, if you work with, like, inner critic parts,
yeah,
they usually have origins at a very young
of
age.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, deep wounding and not good enough parts, and, yeah, ironically or not, my most driven clients out here who come to the Bay Area to be, like, special unicorns in tech and startups, like, they have often the deepest wounding around their worthless parts, right? And so, come here to
Right.
make it and be someone, be shiny. Yeah.
Yeah, and the shame triangle, that in that system would be these overachieving or overfunctioning
Yes.
escapers.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, to
That's
go
the
for
point.
status
There's
and right, wealth and achievement in order to not feel shame and not have the inner critic pipe up.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because when I'm working with it, I can just see it. I can just see that polarity like clear as day,
yeah,
when I'm working with a client. But it can take a while to really tap into like, how do you know when you're operating from your core wounding? You know, and that's just a question I put out there to clients often. Right? I had this client today who had a really difficult interaction with some coworkers who someone had basically said like, I think you didn't do a great job with this thing. And it just took her right back to being, 12 years old in the kitchen and mom going, you didn't apply yourself, you didn't
mm,
do good. Right. So it's like, again, there's the shame of like, you're calling me bad and my
right,
badness is being witnessed in a group of 7 people that I need love and connection with, you know?
yeah,
So feels
that's
very
the
threatening,
essence of
feels
it.
literally life threatening.
Right. Yeah, it is. I mean, that's shame is connected to life threat
Yeah.
because social threat is actually life threatening
Yep.
when we're little.
100%.
Yeah.
Um, well, Jessica, we'll have to do a part 2 then when the book about shame comes out because
Yes.
it's a hot topic
Great.
around here. So let me know when that's out. I'd love to have you back on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then yeah, for folks listening, how can they find out more about you and get a hold of your books and learn more about working
Yeah,
with you?
my website is jessicafern.com. So that's sort of where you'll learn about me, see where my books are. And my books are available in all the places that you can get books online. Yeah.
Perfect. Love it. We'll put links to that in the show notes. And yeah, thank you again for being here and keep in touch until next time.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again, Jessica. Thanks for listening to another episode of Going Inside. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, and share your favorite episode with a friend. You can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at John Clarke Therapy, and apply to work with me one-on-one at johnclarketherapy.com. See you next time.